Check, check. Hey, can you hear me?
Yo,
Yo, how's it
what's going
going?
on? I'm
Are the
good. I'm good.
levels
How you doing?
okay?
Yeah, levels are all good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Clear? Because I'm not sure if
Yeah.
it's coming from this or from this, but whatever. It's all
Yeah,
good.
I don't know. I've got a complicated thing going on as well.
No stress.
Anyway,
How you
Michael, it's
doing?
nice.
Long
I'm,
time.
I'm, yeah, I'm doing well. Living this strange new life as we all are. Just, trying to keep things happening and spirits up. But yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
Um, Today better than others because I was listening to a lot of your tunes after lunch and it got me feeling that kind of summer vibe. But how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. It's been the same. It's been crazy, crazy time, but thankfully still managed to be creative. So that's a huge blessing. I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah,
And
I wanted to ask you about that. What's your kind of day to day looking like now?
It's been it's been pretty like stable to be honest, because like I wake up early, um, with the gym and then work on music basically the whole day, and that's been an outlet. It's been awesome getting to do like sessions with people. Surprisingly, like the Zoom FaceTime sessions have been pretty productive. Keeping up with friends and family, very important, I think, just to stay sane.
Yeah,
And yeah, listening to a lot of music and making a lot of music.
that's great to hear. So, are you in Brooklyn right now?
I am, yeah, I'm in Bushwick. It's actually kind of sunny day today. We had like snowstorm for 3 weeks, so
Yeah,
looks pretty good outside right now.
that's great to hear. Is what's the kind of the community like at the moment in New York? Obviously, it's a
To
very
be,
vibrant place usually, but I don't know what it would
yeah,
be like at the moment.
to be honest, Bushwick and where I live it feels normal. Like it feels like restaurants are up, there's music in the streets, people walking around, everybody's wearing masks. Um, as opposed to I think some parts of the city, like Manhattan, some parts of Manhattan are like shut down. Uh, and it definitely doesn't feel the same as before the pandemic. But where I am, really lucky. It just like everything kept moving forward, and it's also very diverse. It's like an
Yeah.
intersection of like Dominican and Puerto Rican communities, and then there's Haitians here. There's African, like a Nigerian restaurant right near where I live. So it's like it's very, very mixed, and I love that. So it feels like a good place to be right now.
Yeah, I think I was reading that you've been purposely trying to seek out dope, like local food spots to support over the pandemic. Have you found any
Yes.
Brooklyn gems you'd like to share with
Oh
the
yeah,
audience?
definitely. That's actually been, I think, as soon as I saw what was happening with entertainment industry and how essentially overnight, right? Like all of these clubs and all of the music industry and film industries that didn't have steady jobs just like suddenly lost everything. I realized that's probably happening with restaurants too. And yeah, these are family-owned businesses, right? Like most, as with most things that are passion projects, it's people that just are like, I'm gonna do this, and I don't really think too much about the financial part of it, but I love doing what I
Yeah.
do. And so there's a lot of family restaurants in the neighborhood here. So like the Nigerian restaurant, for example, that's one that like that's a family that's been running it. They're super sweet. It's called Hills Cafe. And then there's another spot that's like Venezuelan food that's delicious. I've got great arepas. So I've been eating from there too. There's like a great falafel place called Queen. Um, yeah, there's those are like I think the go-to delicious like great lunch spots. There's an Indian spot too that I've been eating from. All basically within like this like park. There's like next to this park. Um, all of these restaurants are right there. So yeah, Hills Cafe, Queen, and the Indian spot. I'm gonna get the name so I could send you just in case anybody is actually interested in
Yeah.
going.
No, I mean, when travel's back open, I'd definitely like to check out some of them myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love New
yeah.
York. So we're here to talk about, you've just released a brand new EP, Melanin, which is amazing, by the way. And as
Thank you.
always, you're a extremely collaborative artist. I think just by nature at this point, it seems like that's just how you operate. Working on this EP, I'm not sure how much of it was done before the world all kind of locked down and how much was done during. But it'd be interesting to know how a collaborative artist like you has adapted their collaborative process to continue working and feeling creatively satisfied in this new world we're living in.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, most of the songs were done. They were at least recorded pre-pandemic, with the exception of Melanin, which we did in the summer of pandemic. So it was summer 2020 with Callow. But the rest, yeah, all the rest of the songs I had recorded vocals from Shay, from Shirazi. I had the stems from Barbatukis for their part in the Stemperado, and Paul as well, Paul Beauvoir. We recorded Oh Mama, the vocals for that in New Orleans. So all of those all of those songs were done right before lockdown happened, and I ended up working on production during lockdown, which I think it lends itself like when you're by
Hmm.
yourself, production is a pretty singular. Usually, it's a singular process, and that was helpful. But in terms of recording and stuff, those were all still in the room, and even with Kahlo during the summer when we did that in 2020, she's my neighbor. So we
Right.
literally just ended
That's
up meeting up
amazing.
at my place. Yeah, it was great. She was one of the only people I saw for about a year
Yeah.
in person, which is like wild to think about. But we got to link up and record the vocals and stuff and like work on that track. So yeah, I think luckily I knew everybody going into this, and I've done since pandemic started. I've done like Zoom sessions and like FaceTimes with people I've never met. That also is cool. So it's definitely possible. You just have to make sure you're working with people that are actually like fun. Otherwise, you're gonna be like, it's like a weird date, like you're talking to
Yep.
somebody and the vibes were.
Hold on, man. I think we just had a bit of a weird connection there, but I think we're good again. Yeah,
It's
it's
not, yeah,
interesting. And I definitely remember at the start of the pandemic, a lot of us producers and beat makers, we were kind of cocky going into it. We were like, this is what we've been training for. We
yeah,
already spend all
exactly.
our time on our own. And then I think it got 3 or 4 months in, and then we realized, oh, even us computer heads, we do need some human interaction. But I don't want to stick on the pandemic vibe for too long. What I'm most interested in with yourself, and you've obviously been on the Stay Free show before, and our show is all about that global, international fusion of, I guess, just black diasporic genres. And it's always, culturally, over the last 20 years, it's always been really interesting how they have been named and kind of branded in publications and by American DJs and Western producers and whatnot. So of course you've got your separate genres. You've got your dancehall, your reggaeton, Afrobeats, etc. And it's always been interesting how, as we've gone on, people like yourself have started to make kind of all these genres in one big melting pot, but no one's ever really known how to call it. Some like white Europeans have kind of renamed it their own thing, like a tropical house, which in a way can be seen as quite offensive because you're kind of whitewashing it. Or some people will just stick to calling them the individual names. It will be soca, dancehall, reggaeton, Afrobeats. Other people call it global bass. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that, because it's like a really interesting topic, especially when speaking to people about what I do as a music lover, or I'm sure you probably have the same thing, is how do you summarize all that culture up into a simplistic term without being offensive or disrespecting the cultures you're trying to put together?
No, for sure, for sure. And I also I want to make sure the connection's stable. Can you hear me all good? It's not cutting
Yeah, I
out
can
or
hear
anything.
you. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I think you mentioned tropical house, right? So you
Yeah.
were saying like the tropical house term for me was always a weird one because it's a term that like nobody who made music in the Caribbean called their music tropical house, which is
Hmm.
like it was always from the outsider's perspective, um, as opposed to like dance hall, where like everybody that's in Jamaica making music usually would refer to what they're doing as dance hall or reggae or like I I think when people outside of the sound, right, are assigning labels to it, it's gonna go wrong somewhere because
Yep.
as you're creating music as an artist, right? The music that you're making is just music. Like I personally try not to think about the genre I'm making when I'm making it, and I know a lot of artists that I work with do the same. So we just create music, and we happen to be from the Caribbean or from Africa or from Latin America or wherever, and like um, maybe that artist is like known for making reggaeton, right, or making Rabodai, like the Haitian genre, or making Afrobeat or Afro pop or whatever it is. So I think that in the moment when you're making it, you're just making music and you're making vibes that you love and assigning the label to it. Unfortunately, it's a complicated process. Like I understand why we need labels for things. It definitely makes searching easier. It makes like the algorithms work better and just like that aspect of it, it helps. But personally, I wouldn't even really know how to categorize this music, right? Like the what I made
Hmm.
with Melanin, I feel like it's so diverse in terms of sounds and influences that every song is a different genre, technically, or like multiple genres. So I just refer to it as African diaspora music, I guess, and like
Yeah, I agree.
it's global music, right? Like ultimately, it's made up of many different things around the world and many influences. So I consider it global music first and foremost, and then with the roots coming from African diaspora. And I think every other artist will have a different way of labeling it, and that's okay. Just the main thing is you don't want to label it for someone else. That's like what I would personally, from my own experience, I never really enjoyed when other people would say what I am or what I'm not, and I don't think anybody really likes that either. So it's that was I like the tropical house thing, which is like that's not a genre, but okay, it's now it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's up to you,
Yeah,
if you're an outsider of a culture, to ask people from a culture how they want to be represented, not
yeah,
to take it upon yourself to create a new
yeah,
little cliche phrase for it.
yeah.
On that same topic, I don't know if you've been reading the news the last few days, but Spotify just announced they're opening shop in the Caribbean and
hmm
Africa,
hmm
a whole load of new countries. Is that something you've read about? Is that something you're excited about? How do you think that will affect the landscape of Caribbean and African sounds in the next year?
I'm so excited that they've been doing this. We've been talking about that too. Like anytime I get a chance to bring that up, like I have a playlist with Spotify that we work on together called Haitian Heat. That's like the
Yep.
destination for Haitian music and like incorporating both modern and like OG artists from
Hmm.
Haiti and in the diaspora locally. And it was just so funny that we had a Haitian playlist that was not available in Haiti. So it's like
Yeah.
anybody in Haiti that wanted to listen to that playlist couldn't listen legally because it wasn't available. And it still is not available yet because Haiti has a very complicated copyright uh, situation. But I think that just having access in more of the Caribbean and in Africa for genres that come from those places, it's gonna create a more, I think, honest representation of how big these genres are. Because I think for a lot of people, if Spotify was your only resource for the size of like the music industry in Nigeria, you would think it was tiny in comparison to like what was happening in Colombia, for example, or
Hmm.
anywhere else in Latin America. And I think now that there's, you know, millions of people overnight that are going to be joining the platform and are going to have access and are going to be like putting their listening hours, their dollars, right, into the artists that they like, it's gonna create more opportunities financially for the artists, which is a great thing always. And it's gonna hopefully just shine a spotlight on how big some of these regions really are, including the Caribbean, including Africa. And I know with Asia as well, that was a huge thing with like how big the Indian market is, how big the Korean market is, the Chinese market. Like all of these places around the world have hundreds of millions of people listening within, and then hundreds of millions of people outside, right? So it's just gonna look more fair, I think.
Yeah, I was reading a article from, I believe now, the ex-manager of your friend Jay Balvin, Rebecca Leon, and
Hmm.
she was actually talking about this huge like explosion, right, of reggaeton in the last 5 years, and she was saying it wasn't an explosion at all. Like in South America, there's been a like enormous audience for
Yeah,
that music
yeah,
forever, and it's just because the DSPs and Spotify and whatnot launching in those countries just quantified that for the major labels because it was no longer happening on LimeWire or YouTube.
Yeah.
And there was a quantification for it. So to everyone else, it looked like, oh, wow, Mahente or Despacito made this happen when really it was always happening. So it will be interesting to see if suddenly Afrobeats becomes like the biggest genre in the world overnight, like reggaeton did 5 years ago.
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. It's such a, it's like you said, right? People are using LimeWire, people are using WhatsApp, sending stuff back and forth on text. Like that was the way music was getting around. YouTube kind of shows it. You can see partially with how YouTube videos are and like how big the songs are on audio over there. That there's definitely a disconnect in terms of streams on services versus like how quickly things get sent over just via WhatsApp forwarding. But yeah, I think that it'll be a beautiful thing to just see like Wizkid having the play number of like Billie Eilish, or like Mr. Easy
Yeah.
being equivalent with like The Weeknd, like that kind of thing is gonna be so cool to finally be visible for people. And yeah, I think it's gonna create also like more equity around the world.
One of my favorite songs on the new EP is Love Me Suffer with your friend Shirazi or Shirizi.
Shirazi, yeah.
Shirazi. And he also worked with you on, I think, my favorite Michael Brun song ever, which is Soweto.
Yeah.
What's the relationship with him? Because obviously, like 2 times lucky now, there must be some special chemistry there. Tell us a bit about him.
Yeah, Shirazi's a really good friend. Unfortunately, he's not as good in FIFA as he is as in making music, but he's so talented. He's like honestly, I think one of the most iconic voices that I've had a chance to work with, and I think he has so much to bring to the genre, not only within the African music industry, but also in the pop music industry, the global music industry. He just had a song with Sting. He performed with him on New Year's for like the big NBC, like the New Year's event. And I think, yeah, I just think like friendship first, and then we were able to make Soweto in like a few hours on one of our first studio sessions together. He also lives in New York, so that was just great to be in the same place as someone you're working with. And we have a lot more. We have a lot more music. So he's deep in album mode right now too. I know he's working on a lot of really fun stuff in the future. And Love Me Suffer was one of the many songs that we were working on that we were just like, this is really special. And we knew too, because Soweto ended up being, I think, probably one of my most successful songs I've put out so far. And without really any push, like there wasn't like a big spend or anything for it. Like the music
I
video we
realized
shot
today
like
it wasn't even on your album. I realized today, which I always thought it was.
Yeah, it was literally just like a one-off that we just put out because we loved the song, and to see it get to the point that it's at right now, it's just a testament, right, to great music. And Shirazi's from Benin. He lived in South Africa. He lived in France. He lived in so many different places around the world before coming to New York. And I think that his worldview and what he sings about and what he's experienced is really special. And yeah, I'm just really happy we got to work on stuff together, because I learned something every time we work together.
You've also on the EP worked with, and again, I don't know how to pronounce his last name properly, but Paul Boubron.
Boubron, yeah, yep.
Paul Boubron on Oh Mama. And I think one thing I noticed with you over time is you work with a lot of musicians who may not be a part of the kind of electric dance music, not even say that you're EDM, but in terms of making electronic music for clubs and whatnot, they're not really part of that arena, and they're also, you kind of represent a younger generation to a lot of these artists, especially with artists you worked on Locale, a lot of kind of Haitian kind of traditional musicians, I think. And I wondered what's it like for you and the process bringing these instrumentalists and musicians in to your world, like the world of the younger generation, and kind of a different creative process of making music via a laptop. Like, how does that work with them?
It's actually surprisingly pretty seamless, because I think the way that I work is very much in the moment. Like I try to keep the technology as the background. Like I use the technology as a tool. I don't like use it as it's not like a creative aspect of what I do. It just serves my ideas. And so the artists that I work with, in the same way that like they would use a guitar to just kind of put out the idea they have in their head, or a keyboard, or their voices, that's how I feel like when I'm producing. That's what I hope I'm doing as well. So yeah, getting to share ideas like that where it's seamless and they can say what they want to do, I can say what I want to do, and then we can just like come to a consensus really quick and put the music down. That's the most fun to me. Like when you can actually do that and you're not worried about like the mechanical aspect of creating music, it just ends up feeling natural. Um, and yeah, I love working with experienced artists. Like anybody that's more talented than me in any aspect of what they do, I love working with them because I want to learn. I want to get better at what I'm doing. I want to get better at rhythms. I want to get better at melodies and harmonies and arrangements, right? And like Paul Bourboin is a perfect example of an artist that I feel like has experienced so many amazing things throughout his life, in Haiti and around the world. Like he's toured all around the world and worked with like Lauryn Hill and worked with like Boukman Experience's parents, and like just like his range of artists that he's collaborated with is so incredible, and his ear as a result of that is really finely tuned, and he has such a wide background of genres that influence what he is. So when we work on music, like with Oh Mama, it's you get traditional Haitian sounds, reggae sounds, the electronic sounds. There's like the Western vibe in it too, and like the whistle that we did. And I think that that would only be possible working with an artist that has that kind of like breadth of influences. So I love working with anybody like that. It's so much fun, and I think it also allows the music to be more experimental and like in the moment.
That's amazing. So obviously, as listeners ourselves, stay free, and also people around the world, we're still digesting and enjoying the new Melanin EP. And I'm sure as the sun starts to come out around New York and England and
Yeah.
London, I'm sure it will continue to have a long life over this summer. But is there anything else, Michael Brun wise, we should be looking forward to in the coming months this year? Obviously, you said you're still keeping creative, which is amazing to hear.
Yeah.
Is there anything we should keep an eye out for?
There's actually so much music. Um, I've I've had a ridiculous amount of sessions over last year and even before that I've just been creating. So my projects, I have multiple projects coming. I don't just have this. Melanin was like the first of many to drop, so I don't want to say too much more about that, but there
Hmm.
is like there's some really cool stuff coming up. And then also production wise, like I've been working on producing other artists recently, and I've just been across genres too, which is really exciting. Like things that people probably would never expect of me, but I hope I bring like a really new take on artists you've heard already and genres you've heard already. So yeah, I've got to work with a lot of wish list artists, like with artists that I've put down.
That's amazing.
When I first started, I was like, damn, I wish I could work with this person. And yeah, it just feels like a really amazing time to be making music. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful I get to do this in pandemic. I'm grateful I've had a chance to do like these live stream shows that have been really well received, and continue to grow Bio, my like block party Haitian Caribbean brand. Um, and yeah, just like really being aware that so many people don't have that chance right now. And I hope that in doing this, I can also continue to create opportunities for other artists from where I'm from and also the rest of the world that just like want to share great music. That's like that's what's keeping us going right now, right? Like I feel like everybody has their own tough time that they're dealing with during this, and just building a sense of community helps us feel like we can all get through it.
That's so great to hear, man. And I mean, not only should you feel blessed to be able to keep doing it, as you said, but just the fact that mentally you're in a place where you can still be creative is, I think, really great to hear. Because obviously we want all our favorite artists to keep making music, but I feel like
Yeah.
we're not trying to put that expectation on them because we know everyone's kind of dealing differently. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I also think it's completely fine to just not be creative. Like
exactly.
take a step back, chill, play video games, watch movies, sleep, rest. catch up with friends and family. Like I've done all that. I've been through it. It's a roller coaster, right? So like there's times where you won't be creative and it's okay. And I think being able to just like be in the moment when you need to be and then be out of the moment when you need to be, just having the kind of like decision making where you can really focus in or pull back is so important to mental health. So important to just like
Hmm.
keeping sane and keeping happy. Because like if you're not happy doing music or doing this, I think it's important to just take a step back, think about it. What is it that's like pulling you into a non-productive state or into a state of like unhappiness? And then when the time is right, you come back into it, and it's okay. That's I think that's the beauty of this quarantine right now and pandemic is like everybody's in the same boat, right? Like everybody can't tour. Everybody, there's no rush in that sense. So just take care of yourself first, make sure you're all good, and then the rest will come, the music and everything else. But there's community. There's a lot of community, and there's resources and people out there that are supportive and here for each other. So I think that's I've noticed so much of that, and that's a really reassuring feeling as an artist.
I hear you. Well, thanks so much for taking time to speak to us. Really appreciate it.
Of
The
course,
show
thanks for
will
having me.
always the show will air on the third, so I'll make sure Nikita or yourself have the
Perfect.
details for
Perfect.
that. And yeah, man, I hope you continue to have such a creative, good time over the next few months.
Yo, definitely, definitely. And it's good to see you again. Keep in
You too,
touch.
man.
Yeah, if there's ever anything that you need, just let me know. I'm here.
I will do. All right, Michael. Thanks so much. Yeah. Speak soon. Peace.
Take care.